What's going on, everybody? I wanted to do a video on intuitive eating. It's been a while since I've done a video, but I wanted to wait uh, a little bit before I start talking about it, just because, and share my experience, because it's been 14 weeks since being more of an intuitive eater versus tracking macros all the time. And so now I feel like I can give a little bit more of my experience and what it is. But the main reason why I started doing it is because I've been tracking since 2013, whether it's in a prep or whether in an improvement phase, it didn't matter. I was always tracking food. Like, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It's just that, during this last prep, I was tracking my macros. I was ketogenic. I was tracking blood glucose. I was tracking blood ketones. I was tracking my resting metabolic rate. I was tracking my VO2 max. I was tracking so many things during this last prep, that it almost like it really did put like a number on me as far as so many things and being so obsessive about the numbers. Don't get me wrong, I'm a numbers driven person. Like, I really like the data because you get to see it, you make adjustments, and whatever you measure moves. So if you measure your data and see where you're at, you can make adjustments to properly make more progress in a realistic fashion. And that just makes sense to me. But I feel like, you can definitely take it over the top. You can take anything to the extreme. And, with contest prep, I was tracking everything and anything, like to a T. And I was getting to a point where, yeah, it became, I believe, like unhealthy, as far as obsessing about it. You're probably like, oh, you track your macros. I mean, that's kind of unnecessary. And you tracked your blood glucose. I mean, that's, you're doing that like once a day. No, I was doing that like 5-6 times a day. And blood ketones, you're like, okay, maybe you're just tracking that, you're just testing that once every couple weeks. I mean, it's not necessary to track it every day. But you know what I was doing? I was tracking it almost every single blasted day, and I was tracking it after a meal. See what it looked like. I fasted, and I saw what the levels looked like. I did cardio, and I saw what happened, just to see like what was actually happening internally. How was my body responding? And don't get me wrong, like, I learned a lot by tracking all this data. And then even my resting metabolic rate test, I tracked it in the beginning of my prep, and I tracked it, throughout my prep, and a little bit more obsessively towards the end, because I was like, I had to dig hella deep, during those last, I don't know, 8 weeks or so, 8-10 weeks. I was just like doing so much, and I just wanted to see what my metabolic rate was, or just curious. And I was testing it all the time, and I don't know, I was just like obsessive about all this data. And I'm grateful for the fact that I was able to track so many things. And yes, we had an InBody as well, an InBody 570, and I was able to do body compositions. Although the InBody isn't very accurate, like, I hate that machine, just because it's dependent on how much hydration. And I don't know, it's a whole nother video. But the fact of the matter is, I was tracking that. Even though I hate that, it's not very accurate, even though they say it's accurate. But I was tracking it all the time. I was like testing my body fat and all this crapola, and it was like weighing on me. I believe that because of all this added stress, along with the stress of prep, um, that it probably hindered me progressing even further than or it took me a lot longer to get where I needed to get to, because of all that added stress. And I did a video on my my lab work, and how crazy my hormones were, my kidney and liver functions were. And now, I did my lab work 5 weeks post prep, and I did that video as well, where everything started to improve. But I made the decision that after my prep, let's go ahead and do intuitive eating. I mean, I've been practicing managing my macros for so long that, hey, that's the next step. And I believe that there are levels of how you approach nutrition. Ground zero is like meal plans, and you just don't learn anything from food. When you're given something and you're just told to eat it, whatever's on this plan, you eat it. Like, there's really no thought process. There's really no like, like how much protein am I really getting? Grams, or how much fiber am I getting? How much carbs am I getting overall? You don't really learn any of that. You follow the plan, you move on with your life. The next phase is like food exchanges. So food exchanges is a dated system where you basically have carb exchanges, protein exchanges, and fat exchanges. So to make it really easy, you're like, hey, if I don't want, this rice, brown rice, can I have something else? Okay, you can swap what that serving equivalent looks like, and we're gonna give you sweet potato. Where it's about the same as far as the breakdown. It's not exact. It's not an exact transition or exchange, but it allows some variation. So you start learning a little bit more about food in that respect, but it's still limited. You don't really know too much. And then the next step in my progression was flexible dieting, tracking my macros, and it opened the door wide open as far as food variety. I'm very grateful that I found it, that friends told me about it, and I didn't have to be so restrictive in how I approached food. And in this approach, you learn a lot more about food quality and food quantity. Because you're tracking your macros, you understand what you're getting from your food, and you know where your areas of opportunity are. And so, you learn a lot more about what you're putting into your body and how much you're putting into your body, how much your body really needs. So you get the numbers, and it's very helpful. Some people, in my experience, don't like tracking. This is just not something they like to do, but they feel restricted for some reason when they track their food, and they're like, man, if I track my food, it's hard to track according to your macros. I'm like, I know, it is hard. It's a progression type approach. And so being able to understand what you're able to eat, but once you understand, you're like, hey man, if I want top sirloin steak tonight versus just chicken tenderloin, I know that my fat for my top sirloin is going to be a little bit higher on that, so I need to watch my fat overall, or for that meal in particular, because it doesn't exactly match up protein for protein, fat for fat, and all that good stuff. So you start learning a lot more, and you have a lot more options available to yourself. It starts making a lot more sense. And then the next step is intuitive eating. Intuitive eating kind of breaks up into two places. For me personally, I feel like doing it during an improvement phase first, really, you're able to test the waters a lot more efficiently, because there's room for error. I mean, yeah, there's room for error in a prepper and everything, but there's room for error with playing around with it. There's a lot less stress. Hunger cues. You're not always hungry like in a prep. So the next phase after that is during a contest prep is practicing intuitive eating. I feel like that is the ultimate lesson learned. Like that's a true lifestyle, that you are able to know what your body needs to make the proper adjustments to be stage ready without having to track your macronutrients. It's insane. Like, you see pro bodybuilders, people that are in the competing at a very high level, and they aren't tracking macros, man. Some of these people just aren't tracking food. and they just look really good. Um, they know what their body responds to, and they're still open to little things here and there, but they know what their body needs in particular times of the day, particular moments during their prep. Like, they are so fine-tuned and in tune with their body that it just makes sense. And they're not just eating boring food either. They know, they go out to eat, and I seen this. Like, it's very gives me a lot of hope, to be honest with you. Like, don't get me wrong, I feel like tracking your food during your prep definitely has helped me, helped my clients, but I'm trying to do something a little different and see if that will allow me to do the same thing, and where I'm not so controlled by the numbers but more controlled around what my body needs, and have that intuition of what that looks like food wise. And so there are lessons that I have learned so far with practicing intuitive eating. The first one is a big one, because you want to set yourself up for success no matter what it is. During a contest prep, powerlifting meet, even just to improve your physique, your fitness level overall, where there is no contest in sight, that you want to set yourself for success. So when I made this plan to do intuitive eating past my prep, man, like, my numbers were very terrible. Like, and I know Lipton and ghrelin, once you start eating, like, it's so hard to not stop eating. And so because those hormones are just so skewed at the time, and even though I practice flexible dieting, I always like hoard candy. I always compete in the spring, and the Easter candy, there's so much, and they're all good, and it's kind of ridiculous. Like, it's not hard for me to admit the fact that I had like tons of those stupid Reese's peanut butter eggs. Like, I don't know what it is. It must be the ratio between peanut butter and chocolate, but I don't know. I had so much of those. I had the big eggs, the little eggs. Less calories. But I even had the Easter bunny. I had so many different types of candies. Some of my fan favorites, and then of course I had some cookies, and they're supposedly limited edition, but I still see them on the shelf. So hooray for marketing. But the fact of the matter is, I had so much stock of these candies that even though like 2 weeks post my prep, I really didn't have a desire to eat. Like, I wasn't feeling like this need of like, oh my gosh, like, I'm wilting away, I need to put on weight. Like, I wasn't feeling any of that. It's just that it was there. Like, the food was there. And I always hear this from people, is that if it's there, you're gonna eat it. And especially after a prep, like, man, it's there. Even though I'm not hungry for it or like needing it, it just finds its way into my mouth. And and I will say that that really didn't set me up for success. Like, having all those things, and even though practicing flexible dieting, you tend to have a lot more control over what you're eating, supposedly. But I feel like everybody struggles post prep. So you want to set yourself up for success. Whatever the goal is, whatever your nutrition goals are, you want to set yourself up for success. If full on, if you have that crap in your house, get it out of your house, man. So that way you're a little bit more prone to be successful, where it's not out of sight, out of mind, right? So yeah, setting yourself up for success. I feel like if I didn't have all those all those treats, I probably wouldn't have put on so much weight so quickly post prep. because I was eating fairly healthy post prep. Like I was eating a lot more at home. So that brings me to the other lesson that I learned is that eating at home overall is so much easier. It's so much easier to account for. It's cost efficient. When you cook at home, it tastes a lot better. You know exactly what you're getting, and it's the funny thing is I still weigh out things, I still measure things, but I'm not tracking it. It's just a habit that I have. So it allows me to be a lot more accountable. Don't get me wrong, I still eat out occasionally, but I eat out far less than what I was before. And it's allowing me to really gain an understanding of what my body really needs, and I can fill all my cravings, with food at home, and still make improvements. So, eating at home definitely cost effective, a lot less stressful because you know exactly what you're eating, and what you're bringing to work, what you're eating for dinner when you come home. All these little things definitely add up and save you time, because the moment you stop planning things, even though like supposedly people are like, oh, if you're flexible dieting, you can just eat out all the time and you can do this and you justify that. Sorry to burst that bubble, but no, like, meal planning, is definitely something that's very helpful. Eases the burden. And some people just can't go out to eat and just eat whatever they want, or whatever the or whatever the thing is, and still hit all their whatever their daily requirements are. So it's a lot easier, and cost effective in my book. The other thing is, it's the fact that I don't need to eat as much as I thought I needed to. That's a big one for me. Is that in the past, I get told, hey, you get critiqued when you're on that stage, and they give you those things. They're like, hey, you need to get bigger. Great. You need to get bigger. You need to get bigger because this is bodybuilding. You're getting judged on muscularity, your symmetry, your conditioning, all these things. So if you're planning to do bodybuilding, you kind of need to be bigger. And I was like, okay. And then even in powerlifting, you want to get stronger. So if you're heavier, are you that much stronger? It's really not the case. So it's really trying to understand, that I just don't need to eat a lot to make progress, proper improvements. Because at the end of the day, from this last prep when I was 193 pounds when I started, and I end up at 136 after 36 weeks, I'm like, crap, man, I really didn't gain that much muscle. Like, I got up to 193, and that's like the heaviest I've ever been since I got married back in 2007. And I mean, I was strong, but I probably could have been stronger, because even in a prep, when I was in 170s, I was lifting as heavier than what I was when I was 193, and I was eating less, and I was doing cardio. So, I think that's a huge lesson in itself, is I don't need to eat as much. There's not a need to eat as much. There is, so it's allowing me to really, it's a psychological thing, is that just because I'm eating more doesn't mean I'm going to make more improvement. It's not going to make me any stronger. It's not going to help me build any more muscle if I eat excessive amounts of food. Just because I'm gaining weight doesn't mean I'm gaining the right weight. I guess you could say the body comp isn't going to be where it should be. So I want to be a lot more in striking distance when I contest prep again. Like I said, I don't want to lose another 55 pounds. Like, that was kind of hella crappy. But it was necessary. So I'm grateful that I have really good coaches, Rap Fitness, Roger and Allie Baker. I mean, without them, there's no way in heck I could have got to where I got to. So, but I really do want to stay more in a striking distance. And since I was able to stay strong in the 170s, even the low 170s, I was, still hitting a lot of heavy weight. So even if I decide to do another powerlifting meet, I know that I don't have to eat so much to be strong. So the other lesson is protein. So the funny thing is like I find that if I don't track my food like in the past, my protein is actually low. Like I'm not talking about like, oh man, you're not getting like 200 grams of protein, or like not getting 1.5 grams per pound. No, I'm not even getting. Sometimes I'm not even getting. I wasn't getting even like 1 gram per pound of lean muscle mass. So maybe like 120 grams, 130 grams, and maybe in a ketogenic diet that would be okay. But I feel like that's one thing that I know that I have to pay more attention to is how much protein am I getting. I'm not trying to get an excessive amount in there, but I'm trying to make sure that I get enough to yield the improvements necessary to recover and build more muscle and all that good stuff. So that's one thing is I just have to pay attention to how much protein I'm intaking just mentally. So I try to get 30 grams per serving every time I eat. Sometimes if I'm not eating as much throughout the day, I kind of have to throw in a couple of protein shakes, which I don't really like doing. I'd rather eat my food than drink my food, but if it's going to allow me to at least boost up where my protein should be at mentally, then boom, I'll hit up a shake. The other thing is just kind of hitting on emotional versus need. I think this is a huge one, is just learning what my body really needs versus what I really want. And I think there's a healthy balance between the two, especially during like an improvement phase, is trying to gain an understanding of what my body really responds to. And when I first stopped my prep, I started eating a lot more of the foods I grew up with. I was eating like the typical Asian food, and like Hawaiian food, because I grew up in Hawaii. So we ate a lot of white rice, and like white rice all the time, like every meal, and just a lot of Asian type vegetables. So I'd go to like Asian marts and pick up Asian vegetables, and make some marinades that are more Asian based, use a lot more of those type of things. And I was feeling really good. Like I feel really nice. Like I feel really good. I feel healthy, and of course my lab work was improving. So it's just kind of gaining an understanding of what my body really responds to food wise. And all it's not just about eating Pop-Tarts, Rice Krispie treats, ice cream, and all that stuff. It's overall how am I feeding my body nutritionally, and how's my body looking, how's my body recovering, how am I improving in the gym, how's my overall feel of the day. And so with that being said, weighing myself, do I really do that? Not really. I got really obsessed about that during my prep. Like it was ridiculous. So my wife hid the scale. She still hid the scale, but I know where she hid it. That's the funny thing, is I know where she put it. So sometimes I weigh myself, like just to see. I'm just curious. And I'm like I'm like 175. So you're probably thinking like, man, if you weighed like 136, like at a low depleted, and you like weighed like 142, 144 on stage, man, you gained like 30 pounds. And yeah, I did gain 30 pounds, but like I said, I set myself up for not success with having all that candy there in the beginning. And I think that's where I gained a majority of my weight. But now I'm at a point where, I'm 175. I'm just as strong, if not stronger, than what I was, before I started my prep. So, occasionally I weigh myself, but I pay more attention to now, like how am I recovering from my workouts, how am I recovering from the day, and then how am I, what kind of food am I fueling my body, you know, before my workouts, after my workouts. So even though I'm not tracking my food now, it's very interesting. You pay a lot more attention to what you're putting in your mouth because you just become a little bit more aware since you've been tracking your food for so long. And so that's allowed me to really understand emotional versus need. Like, man, I really want to eat more than this much ice cream that's on my plate or my bowl, but what I really need is I just need a little sample and I'm good to go. Like, I think that's what really is helpful. And I feel like if I did this during a prep, I probably wouldn't be very good about the emotional versus need thing because, man, you just get like really hungry. Like it just happens. So it's very hard to really distinguish the two because you got the brain fog going on, you got the hunger going on, you got the tired going on. So do I really need that? And so, for me, intuitive eating during like an improvement stage is definitely allowing me to explore that a little bit more. What my body really responds well with, what I kind of need to limit on, and still enjoy life. I think that's the biggest thing is I don't feel guilty. And I think when it came down to meal plans and flexible dieting, both have their extremes where it becomes unhealthy. And I think I got to that place with macro tracking. Flexible dieting is like I took it so to an extreme that it just wasn't healthy. And so I want to take that next step and feel like I can make progress, live my life, and not be so bogged down by a number and still make proper progress, keep things in a realistic perspective for myself. And I feel like if I do this, I can share that with my clients because ultimately, I don't see everybody tracking for the rest of their life. Like, I feel like, no, like, that's just not gonna happen. That's not a realistic outcome for a majority of the population. And especially if somebody does not compete, if they are not a competitive person, I just don't see them tracking for the rest of their life. So if you can gradually make steps towards that intuitive eating approach, it's going to allow them to be, at that place where they feel confident and have control, total control of their intake, where they are not a slave to food. And that is ultimately the goal, is work through that progression and continue to make proper adjustments according to what your body needs. But so that's the next phase for me, is really trying to gain that momentum around what my body really needs, what my body responds to, and how can I make proper adjustments, not just going to another contest prep, but just overall healthy. And I feel like I'm on my way. And of course, if there's any questions, if there's any comments, please leave them below, and I'll be sure to answer any of those. So, of course, if there's any suggestions, for those who have already tried intuitive eating or they currently are on that road and they're very successful or just even struggling, just let me know, because it's always nice to hear other people's experiences on what they're doing, because it allows me to try them and see if they work for me. So I appreciate people watching this. The video is hella long, so I appreciate people that have just watched the whole thing, but I wanted to be able to share my whole perspective so far on intuitive eating, my approach, the lessons learned, and what kind of the next steps are. So thank you and have a good one.